G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle as we preview this game against the Brisbane Lions. It feels weird to try and analyse a game that we have this weekend. It just feels almost inappropriate. I don't know why. I think it's just, being wrenched into thinking about the big picture stuff. Obviously a new coach, Jared Schofield for the time being, and then somebody else. To then try and refocus and narrow our attention to a game this weekend, it just feels a little bit odd. It feels like a real sideshow at the moment. But nonetheless, we do have a big game against the Brisbane Lions. Maybe not a big game, but they're all big games for the rest of the year, you'd think. Hopefully we use this as a little block to continue to learn about the list. And I've talked about selection previously. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the Brisbane Lions, how they're going. Over the last 5 weeks, a bit of a stats breakdown of how well they're doing, and then rehash some selection issues that we've got. So we know that Simo will not be coaching this weekend. Not a surprise for me. I would have thought it would be kind of a strange experience for him trying to get his head in the game for one last crack. And like I said, I feel pessimistic about the way this game's going to go. So I don't know if he's really missing out on much. I think he deserves the break. And we'll get a good look at Jared Schofield as senior coach at the moment, who I think is the right choice. I was happy with that. I think the only other contender was Knights, but Schofield has always had, a big rap on him and generally, been associated with successful teams. So he was like an amazing coach for Subiaco in the Waffle for their years of dominance. And then he went to Port Adelaide over a period where Port Adelaide went from being mediocre to quite good there for a little while. I think it was 2019 to 21. Port were average in 19 and then top of the ladder in 20 and then 21. I feel like they still made it prelim, didn't they? So that's not to forecast, him having an amazing 7 weeks for us at West Coast as senior coach, but I'll just say that he's somebody that has a pretty good reputation and, I'm not ruling him out to be senior coach when the time comes for that permanent appointment. Obviously, there's a lot of benefits to getting some fresh eyes into this team and he's been around the mix for a while. That's a tangent we can go into at another time. So, funnily enough, this is the first time we've ever played the Brisbane Lions at Optus Stadium, ever. Since the stadium was launched in 2018, we've never played a home game against Brisbane. This is following a week where we hadn't played Melbourne at the MCG or in Melbourne for 10 years. So looking at how they play this ground, they have played Fremantle at Optus 6 times in that time frame. 3 wins, 3 losses. Brisbane have generally been a good team for the last 5 or 6 years that Optus has been a thing, and Fremantle have fluctuated, so that doesn't really tell us much, other than the fact that I think they'll go okay at Optus Stadium. We also have not beaten the Brisbane Lions since the final round of 2018. So we've won a premiership more recently than the last time we beat the Brisbane Lions. That was at the Gabba, and I think that sealed second spot, and it was an important win, so I do remember it. As for the last time we actually met the Lions, this was while I was in Croatia last year. I remember waking up after a festival and seeing this horrific scoreline. Well, we lost 81 points, and to be honest, compared to some of the losses last year, that might be seen as an improvement. Gunston got 3 votes that day with 6 goals. I don't think he's going to be a factor in this one because he plays for Hawthorn now. Harris Andrews and Lockie Neal also got votes. As for us, I think the biggest takeaway from that game was Brady Hough keeping Charlie Cameron to 7 disposals and no goals. And he himself had 22 disposals and 14 marks. And I feel like, from memory, that was kind of the game where Hough emerged into the current player that he is. A very good stopper on opposition small forwards and also impacting with the ball in hand as well. But other than that, not a lot to go from that game. We were decimated last year. I'm not necessarily any more optimistic about this game, but we are certainly a stronger team on paper than we were in that game. So let's talk about the Brisbane Lions and how they're going. They're going pretty well. I've just filmed my power rankings, which is up on the True Footy YouTube channel by the time you're watching this, and I have Brisbane as the number 1 seed at the moment, as the most formed side of the competition. They've won all 5 of their last 5 games, the only team to do that. They've beaten the Power, the Saints, the Dogs, the Demons, and most recently, the Crows. They've had a couple of close wins at home at the Gabba in the last fortnight. Conversely, we're the only team to lose all of our last 5 games. Even Richmond's won 1 in their last 5 games. As for opposition players to worry about, well, where to start? I mean, their backline's good. Payne and Andrews are a great 1-2 punch in terms of key defenders. Up forward, Danaher and Hipwood are playing well at the moment. Hipwood's returned to form over the last 5 or 6 weeks. He had a couple of bags in there. So Danaher's kicked 32, Hipwood's kicked 26. In terms of their midfield, it doesn't get any easier for us. Dane Zorko's having a great year. I think he's playing more backline these days, but Dunkley and Neal are also coming off very good games last week. So that's just fantastic, isn't it? As far as team news goes for them, I think Starcevic will miss with a concussion. Other than that, their injury list is okay, other than the 4 or 5 season-ending injuries they had early, like your Keedy Coleman's and your Lincoln McCarthy's also out for the year. But other than that, fielding a pretty strong team on paper. So our best chance of some sort of upset is if Brisbane, don't show up on time. Maybe they take the field at quarter time and the score will be 0-0. Over the last 5 weeks, I've run some stats and I don't know how valuable a stats dump will be, but I'll try and keep it relevant because we already know that Brisbane are way better than us. But where I think it's helpful is looking at certain opponents who are good at the things that we're good at. And if they're poor in the areas that we're good at, then we could maybe foresee an opportunity for us to get on top in certain stats. We know we're a pretty one-dimensional force at the moment. We need to win clearances to get the ball inside 50. But unfortunately, the stats profile of the Brisbane Lions is not very encouraging. So in the last 5 weeks, we are distantly last for contested ball. Brisbane are about mid-table. The same for uncontested ball, and Brisbane are top 4. And that's a worry because in some of our worst losses, it's around the outside where they're just chip marking and retaining possession where we're not even getting close to the opposition. Brisbane are good at controlling the footy. They're number 1 for inside 50 differential. We're 12th. We've had a couple of good inside 50 games against Melbourne. We actually got some ball inside 50, and against Essendon we were pretty good as well. They're top 5 for clearances. We're 14th. They're first for marks. Again, uncontested marks around the ground is where we can't apply pressure on the opposition, or it's a bit of a chicken egg situation. We're 18th for marks and controlling the footy. Number 1 team for scores from stoppage, number 3 from scores from turnover. So that's just the last 5 weeks, and it just reflects how good Brisbane are. So if you had any optimism going into this game, I might have just snuffed it out for you. But let's talk about us. That's the Brisbane segment of that. To discuss the waffle very briefly, not a good performance again. We did play Peel, who I think are top of the ladder, Fremantle's backup team. And we had a handful of players play okay, and the rest of them were quite quiet. So Andrew Gaff was one of our best on the field, which doesn't add much value to us at the moment because you think with where we're at, we're not probably serious about getting Gaff back into the side. Cully was pretty good, 25 and 7 tackles, and Ryan Marrick was described by some as probably the best Eagle on the field. He had 24 touches in that wing half-back role and 5 inside 50. So that's actually a really good plus for us out of this game, I will say. I wouldn't ignore that. Ryan Marrick being probably the best Eagle of field in a new role in just his second waffle game ever. So if I'm not mistaken, he debuts a week after him getting drafted, so he played 1 waffle game then, and I think this is his first game since then. So that is really encouraging, and I will also highlight Archer Reed, who's coming off a low base, no pre-season, knee injury, tall forward in a terrible waffle team, building fitness, 18 or 19 years old, kicked a couple of goals with 11 touches as well. So that's actually pretty good, and I wouldn't ignore that. That's a bit of a plus for us, although he should be nowhere near the side at the moment. For those calling for Clay Hall, he had a pretty quiet game with just the 12 touches. Not too sure exactly what happened there, but I'd imagine a debut for Clay Hall is not super realistic. So let's talk about the changes we would make. Now, I did highlight some of these changes that I wanted to see, but now we have a little bit more clarity around who's fit. So the main one is McGovern. Now, he's listed as 1 week with his punctured lung or whatever on the Eagles site, and then I saw somewhere else he's out for a month. I don't want to spread rumors or anything like that. I don't know the answer to that. But either way, we can assume for the purposes of this video, he's not going to be available. And Dom Sheed, I think, is going to be fit and available. So that's something, I suppose. And the other thing that has been completely swept under the rug because of the Simpson news yesterday is that Elijah Hewitt's been ruled out for the season. So if you weren't aware, Elijah Hewitt was meant to return to the waffle this weekend. And the week of the game, his foot's flared up. I think it's like a bone stress thing again in his foot. And he's out for the season, and I can't express to you how deflating that is. He's out for the entire second year of his career. And I'm really worried about this. And once again, it just demonstrates our inability to get players fit who are coming off long-term injuries. We're just so bad at this. I don't want to be Chicken Little and talk about what are his career prospects. I'm sure it'll be fine, but I'd be lying if I said I'm not concerned. Like hopefully this doesn't get to a point where next year he has a good preseason right before the season starts. They're like, oh, it's flared up again. Surgery, half a season out. I'm feeling very negative at the moment, but he is probably like my favorite young Eagle, and I think a huge part of our future. So this is a blow. But anyway, let's talk about this game. So McGovern's out. We make the logical choice of Harry Edwards to replace him. And I think that will mean that Rotham gets a reprieve. Now, assuming that that's one change, I need to get Marek into this team. Like, absolutely. And preferably in that wing back role. I do quite like the idea of him in that role. And I think that actually adds something to this team that we don't have. He's got a little bit of speed and foot skills. I think he could easily replace either Witherden or Rotham. I don't know if we drop both because there's only so many defenders we have fit and available at the moment. So I would just say maybe Marek for Witherden if Rotham plays a bit more of a defensive role. Whichever one you keep in, Schofield and the match committee, I don't care. But Marek to play a bit of a roaming halfback role. He's probably not going to be an actual third tall defender. He's probably going to be a bit more of a halfback. So either of them would be a logical choice, but that's Harry Edwards for McGovern and Marek for either Witherden or Rotham. Matthew Flynn is fit or facing a fitness test. I have said this previously, don't play him and Bailey Williams in the same team at this stage. I would probably either give Flynn a game in the waffle or get him in and take Bailey Williams out. So just one ruck with Jack Williams supporting. Now, I want Jack Williams to come into this side, preferably at the expense of Jack Darling. Now, I don't really think that's going to happen, but at the end of the day, this is my video, and I will say Jack Williams to come in and second ruck with maybe Matthew Flynn, Bailey Williams to the waffle, Jack Darling to the waffle. Then, Jermaine Jones, I would probably get rid of out of this team. He hasn't been horrific, but I don't think there's any chance he gets a contract next year at this stage, in my personal opinion. So why not get him into the waffle and get Tyrell Dewar a game? Now, Tyrell Dewar is still pretty raw, but I think we're at the stage now where it's like, all right, give him a handful of games to take that into next year, because in the waffle, things aren't going so well. Might as well get that same exposure at AFL level. Harvey Johnston, I would bring in for Campbell Chesser. Again, I know that Chesser's part of the future. I think there's a case to be made for getting him some confidence in the waffle. Another 5 or 6 possession game in the AFL, how much is that doing for his confidence? Probably not a lot. So I would just give Johnston a game instead of Chesser, and I don't know how much we're really losing in terms of competitiveness and ability to win this Brisbane game. I think that's a fairly logical choice. So structurally, what have I done there? Well, I think you replace Jones, who's probably a wing half back at the moment, with Dewar. That's probably the only one that positionally doesn't make sense. So I would get Dewar into the forward line, and Liam Duggan did spend some time at the centre bounce, about a quarter of centre bounces last week. So maybe Duggan goes back to a more permanent defender role. Dewar comes in, and maybe Liam Ryan and Brockman spend a little bit more time at centre bounces. I highlighted the idea of Liam Ryan to halfback, and I know not everyone agrees with that. So in my thinking, I know that Liam Ryan is probably a better forward midfielder, and I can probably be talked out of this view, but at the same time, if we're trying to accommodate the youth that we need to give games to, then Liam Ryan maybe plays a sacrificial role for the rest of the season in more of a halfback role so that we can fit some of these young guys into the team. And I think with him and Marek playing backwards of centre with a little bit of Johnston perhaps, then it really does give us a bit more speed and class. Jermaine Jones offered speed. His ball use is quite shoddy. Witherden, for instance, is a pretty good ball user, but offers no speed and rebound. So those are the changes I would make. And the sub, you'd have 3 choices in my opinion. You've got Campbell Chesser. Again, I'd probably send him to the waffle. Maybe Jai Cully takes the sub role. Zane True is probably another contender, but Jai Cully, I think, played a little bit better in the waffle game from what I can garner. So those are the 6 changes I would make that I think would get us in the right direction to giving games to some of the guys who probably should be getting games at this point. So finally, a prediction. How do we expect this game to go? It's hard to forecast the emotional response that the players will have. I mean, Simo didn't get much of a response in the last couple of weeks when his job was on the line, and ultimately it cost us. Now that Simo's gone, and there's no pressure to perform necessarily to keep his job, how do the players respond? Is this going to be an emotionally taxing week, or is it going to galvanise them? Is it going to motivate them? Is a motivated version of West Coast who plays well going to be good enough to beat Brisbane? I don't think so, because Brisbane is still, it's not like they're locked into the top 2 and are potentially going to not take us too seriously. I think Brisbane are playing for their season as much as anyone in the competition right now. So I expect we'll maybe play well. I mean, the first quarter is where I'm going to be able to tell whether we're on or not. There's been a number of games where we've conceded 7 or 8 goals to start the game, and if we can get through that little period and stay within touching distance, we might have a chance of making this a good game. It might play out like Shuey and Hearn's farewell game last time, where we played well for 2.5 quarters and got beaten by a better team. I would probably take that at this stage, because the last 6 weeks have been really poor. That would be an improvement on what we're currently showing. I just can't imagine a scenario where we win this game. And I'm a relatively optimistic guy. So I'm going to put my prediction down as 41 points. You know, in an ideal world, we play well, Brisbane kick away late. So be it, but I think the main concern is, what does the team look like? What have we who have we selected? Are we taking strides forward at the moment? That's what we're looking for in the last 7 weeks. So that'll do for the preview, guys. Let me know in the comments what you're expecting, anything you agree with or disagree with in this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.